Okay, hello everybody, welcome to my humble abode. Well, it's not a very big place, but I make do with what I can, and although I have a small amount of counter space, so we make do. So what I'm going to do is first I'm going to go over kind of the ingredients list and a few things that I've gotten so I can prepare this. First we'll take a look at the stock pot here. So this is the pot that I use. It's my lobster pot. It's let's see, it's 10.5 inches across the base and 11 inches tall. The volume of it, I want to say, is approximately 2 gallons or so, but those of you math whizzes out there can figure that out. Also, you're going to need flour. I prefer to use a cheesecloth. It makes things a little bit easier. That's what it is for those that don't know. And then also chicken stock, chicken broth to start with. Of course, if you want to half this, just half the recipe. I make quite a big batch. So there's 2 whole chickens. And then this time of the year, especially, I like these Vidalia onions. Very sweet, excellent taste to them. Next vegetable here is leeks. Some people know what they are, some people don't. I believe they're in the onion family, but they give the chicken and dumplings a very nice sweet flavor. And then, of course, I cheat. Instead of actually getting the Bisquick, I buy the Grand's biscuits, and then I roll them out in the flour, which is hence why you need the flour, and cut them up into smaller pieces. That way they cook evenly, and you don't have some overdone and some underdone. I do like a lot of carrots in mine. That's a 5-pound bag, and then I've got 3 stalks of celery as well. So that's pretty much all the ingredients, everything you need. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start preparing everything, get everything set up, and then I'll turn the camera on in here in a little bit. Alright. Okay, so first thing I always do is I make sure I clean my sink, because, you know, obviously I'm dealing with raw meat here, and, you know, I want to make sure everything is clean. So I've already started it and didn't want to subject you to that, but now I wash it all down, so I'm just going to rinse. All soap off, good. Okay, now, there's a couple ways to do this. Some people had differing opinions from what I've read. Some people do not like to rinse their meat because they basically say that the water splashes off the meat, splashes everywhere. It's going to, you know, contaminate more than would if you didn't wash it. Well, my personal thing is that I'd much rather wash my chicken. I just do it under very, very slow water. And so it's very less, you know, less splashing to do. Then I take my cheesecloth, you know, I take out as much as I need. I lay it out all in the sink here. Then after I'm done washing my chickens, and I put it on top of the cheesecloth. And I'm going to cut right now and take care of all this, and then come back and show you what I do from there. Alright, what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to kind of show you how I go about, you know, just measuring exactly how much cheesecloth it is. I don't know if people are familiar with it, you already know, but it comes in rolls like this, and then you're able to open it up multiple times till it's a single ply. So I just make sure I have enough that probably goes 6-8 inches on either side of the sink, and then I cut it here, I open it all up, and then when I come back you'll be able to see the next part of the process. Okay, so what I've done is I've already taken my cheesecloth, I've cut it to length, I've now opened it all up, and as you kind of see, it's just basically a big piece of gauze from my nurse friends, and is all it really is. I just take it and I center it right here in the sink, and then I bunch it down so that it doesn't, you know, have to touch everything, and I can just toss the chickens in here after I'm done washing them. So that's kind of what I do in order to set up the cheesecloth. The next process is obviously to cut the chickens out of the bag, clean them. As you can see, I'm wearing gloves, and one of the things I do is I put on about 3 or 4 pair of gloves at once. So that way there, I wash the first chicken, take it off, wash the second chicken, do that. I take off the next set of gloves. Then I have clean hands, I can shut the water off, I can do a few things without having to actually wash with soap and water, because that's ultimately what you would have to do if you didn't use gloves. So then when I do that, then I take off the next set after I'm done tying it all up, and then I bring the pot down and, you know, then pick it up and transfer it to pot, and, you know, then I'm usually done with the gloves. Although sometimes when I cut the onions, I do, if they're not Vidalia onions, but Vidalia onions, like I said, are very sweet, very beautiful taste in them, so you don't really have to much worry about that. Although they will still sting your eyes though, interestingly enough. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and cut away and go ahead and cut these, wash these, put them in here, and then I'll cut back when I'm ready to tie it up to show you how to do it. I tried to find butcher's twine today at Walmart, but unfortunately I could not find it, so I'm going to adapt and show you the next best method. But obviously if you have some butcher's twine, when I get to that spot I'll tell you exactly what you would want to do with that. Okay, so I cut up the chickens out of the bags, I washed them down, I've got them in the sink there, and what you guys didn't see me doing is cleaning out that sink with soap and water, washing everything down before I put that pot back in there. So now, I'm going to show you guys the easy way to, well, not the easy way like I said is with butcher's twine, but I'm going to show you how to do this. And like I said, this is an optional step. If you want to just wash them, or not wash the chicken, whatever you choose to do, but put it right into the pot, that's fine. I prefer the cheesecloth because what happens is that if the chicken starts falling apart, if you get busy doing something else while it's cooking, and it starts to fall apart, then it's a lot harder to strain all that broth and all that stock from the chicken and get all the bones and everything out of there, as opposed to cheesecloth. You can wrap it up, do all that, stick it in there, boil as long as you want. It'll fall all apart, but then you just take it all out as one, and I don't have to worry about bones or extraneous skin or anything else like that getting in my chicken and dumplings. It's only in there, what's in there is what I want. So basically what I do is just go corner to corner. Just tie it up. A little fishing trick that I learned. Double do it like that. Less chance of the knot to come out. And I take the other corners. And as you can see, it's very strong. Those that don't know anything about cheesecloth, it's a really great product to be able to use for stuff like this. And then what I'll be able to do is throw in some vegetables, a little bit of onion, celery, carrots right in while it's cooking down. And oh yeah, I forgot to double it up, didn't I? Cooking down, and then when I take this out, those vegetables still stay in there and continue to flavor the broth after I'm done. So tie it together a few more times, and then there you go. Take it, put it in your pot, and then go ahead and remove. Come on. There it is. The next set of gloves. And now I have a few clean fingers in which I can show you the next step. Okay, so the next step after, obviously you saw me put the cheesecloth in the chickens, or excuse me, all the way around, the chickens in the cheesecloth, put it in the pot there, and now I've got it on my stove. Now this is what I like to start with, chicken stock. This is a nice brand at Costco just make. I just saw this today, which is very good. But usually what I buy is I buy the Swanson's because it's 99% fat free and also no MSG, which gives it a much better flavor, I think, in my taste anyways. So some people, or if you don't want to spend the money on the broth, I understand it is a little expensive. You could just go ahead and just fill it up with water. You want about 2 inches above the chicken when you actually go ahead and start filling it up and start boiling it in order to boil it with. Like I said, I'm going to start with the broth, so I'm going to go ahead and put this on the tripod, and then I'll start it up again as I'm getting ready to pour all the broth in. Okay, here's another little thing too. With these, or with anything, it's always good to make sure you shake them all up first. So I'm shaking every one of them up first and pulling all the tabs. Okay, so I did mention to shake it up, but as I realized, or I think I realized anyways, I forgot to mention the reason why anyways. Most of you probably already know, But the fact is that a lot of times these things, as they sit, a lot of the sediment and whatnot, or in the flavors and that they cooked it with, will settle to the bottom. So it's always good to shake things up, and that includes just about anything. You know, juice. Every time I use juice, I always shake it up. The milk, it doesn't really matter. Just always shake it up. It's good for it. Like I said, just keep adding the broth. Keep adding the broth. But do it gently, so careful not to splatter outside the pot. So obviously this is raw chicken we're dealing with here, and any sort of raw food you always want to be careful with. So we're getting close to the top of one of the chickens. Just covered that. Getting there to the top of the second one, and that second one was approximately an inch over the other one, so just so you guys have an idea. So we're just covering the top of that one now, and hopefully I got enough chicken stock. But that's the one really great thing about this, is that because I'm actually, to make chicken stock, you boil chicken in water. Well, I've already got the stock, so I'm already ahead of that, so as concentrated as it's going to be, if I have to add a little water, it's not a big deal. And actually, I usually do just before I have to add vegetables, just because I let it cook for an hour, hour and 15 minutes or so to boil, and that's one of the reasons why I like the cheesecloth, because then I can just take everything out when I'm done, and I have a nice, thick, concentrated stock. Now, there is one special ingredient that I add that only special members of my family and close people have, that I add, that makes it very unique, and unfortunately this is something that was handed down to me and I can't pass around very lightly. So this is the one guarded secret that makes mine unique from everybody else's that does this. Otherwise, if you follow this recipe, it's going to taste almost identical to mine. But I'm sorry, I can't share this with everyone. This is a family secret that was handed down to me from my mom, from my grandmom, and that's just the way it is. Okay, well, here we go. I'm going to go ahead and just let this boil, and I'll boil it for, like I said, an hour and 15 minutes or so, and then I'm going to cut away here. I'm going to show you how I go ahead and prep up all the vegetables and get those ready. Alright, so most everyone knows how to cut onions, but occasionally there may be somebody who's new to cooking that may watch this video that want to know how to cut an onion. And basically you just hold it, you got one end where, it's stuck up out of the ground, the other part that's stick down further into the ground, because onions grow underground, for those that, most that know, some may not. So I basically cut almost all the way through on one side. On the other side I cut all the way through. So this time I'll stop just a little bit short. See how it flaps on like that? That should give me enough, well, not always, but usually enough skin to be able to go all the way down through and get all this outside layer off. Now, a lot of people know, maybe they don't know, but water is an excellent way to prevent the onion from making you cry. Don't know exactly what the chemical is in onion that when you cut it up that will make you tear, but when you cut it, like I just did, and especially in half, directly in half like that, immediately, rinse it right under cold water. And all those juices, what I do is I spread out all the layers of the onion as well, just to get a little bit of water in there. Because to me, that gets a lot more of the juice out that will make you cry when you go ahead and cut these onions up. Just make sure everything is off the onion, obviously. Now, the other interesting thing about onions is that they already have lines in order for it to be cut. So some people may know this, but some people may not. That's why I always bring this up. If you slice, see how there's all lines in the onion this way? If you slice across the grain first time, and then you come back this way, you'll have perfectly diced onions. Little trick that I learned way back in the day. So basically you just start cutting. Try to hold on there. Of course someone's got my really good knife, so this is my backup knife. And obviously as thick as you cut them will be how thick your pieces, diced pieces of onions are. So when you make your first slice, however thick or thin you want them, that's how you do it. And you turn it the other way. Now you cut with the grain, with the lines in the onion. Now I do some very thin, and I do some very thick as well. Now here's the tricky part. When you start getting down towards the end, slide all the ones you cut out, and then flop it over onto the big side, so then you can still hold on to it and do the same thing. I've got some of my onions. Now, that's how I dice my onions for when I actually throw in all the vegetables after the chicken is cooked. Now what I like to do is I like to take one or at least a half an onion, rinse it off, and then just cut it real in slices, kind of like an orange. And this is just to give the stock right now, while all that's cooking, just a little bit of flavor of the onion. And that's why I try to cut it down like this as much as possible, because there's more surface area and allows the broth to be able to extract as much of the flavor as you can. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and add these to the broth. Ooh. And my dog eat that. Oh no, she can't eat that. Then I'm going to cut the other two onions that I have like this. And then I will show you how I do the celery, the leeks, and the carrots next. This is the other little trick that I use as well. I do have a couple of big metal bowls. You get them, hold on. Nice stainless steel bowls. But when the chickens come out of the being boiled for a while, I take and I put one in each of these, and then I stick these in the freezer. When that does it, it just cools it down, because then I've got to pick through the chicken, take all the meat off the bones, and it's pretty hot if you just let it sit on the counter. So that's why I like to throw it in the freezer for 15-20 minutes, really cool it down a little bit, so at least I don't burn too much while I'm stripping the chicken. So instead of using my big bowls to hold the vegetables that I've cut up, I usually use big Ziploc baggies and throw them all in there. That way once it's time for all the vegetables, I just open the bags up and all the vegetables go in all at the same time. Okay, so I've got my onions, almost a half a bag or so. And you notice I flip the lid over like that, and that's just because I don't like to get anything on the seal, because when if you get anything on the seal when you go to seal it up, it obviously doesn't seal well, and kind of anal retentive like that. So you can choose to do it however you want, but it also helps keep the mouth open a little bit once you get a little bit in the bottom of the bag. So now, these are leeks, for those people who aren't familiar with them. Like I said, I think they're in the onion family, really not sure. You end up cutting off most of it. Obviously, it grows like this, with this part of it out of the ground, and these are the roots down here. I usually cut off right about there, and somewhere around there. And I also take off the outer 1 or 2 or 3 layers. So I'll just go ahead and do this, because these are actually the most time consuming of all the vegetables you actually cut up. That's why I cut off there. Trash. And what I do is I feel the stalk, because there's a center stalk there, you could feel all the way up, even though it branches out. And I want to get most of the meat of the leek. As you can see, it's all circular rings, much like an onion, much like a tree. So I go up usually right about there, And then all that part, you can just go ahead and throw out. And, you know, then I go ahead and, you know, determine whether or not that's good enough. And, you know, there seems to be enough meat there. But I will go ahead and take off the first layer or two. And as you can see, you can start to come on, you know, take one more off here. Now, the one disadvantage of this vegetable is as it grows, obviously, as you can see, it grows in layers, and you know, you can separate them so they're not real, you know, tightly packed together, even though it does look tight. What happens a lot of times is, especially, you can see little bits of dirt gets in there. So what I do is I take it down on it, find the spine, and then I take my knife and I go ahead and I cut it right down the center. Now, as you can see, you know, like I said, it's full of rings. So usually what I do is that's how I actually clean it. I'll grab each end like that, I'll pull it apart so I can get water through there, and that's actually how I'll rinse out the leak. Try to get all that dirt out of there, and then squeeze out the water as much as you can. So again, peel it back. I'm going to try to rinse out between all the layers, and you might lose a few pieces like I have in the sink here, and you know, that's fine. You know, just try to save as much as possible. Squeeze out the excess water. And like I said, generally the leeks come in sets of 3, you know, and I usually use 3 for the size I have. Like I said, I always say downsize it, cut everything I use in half, because my carrots are 5 pounds. Unfortunately, you really can't buy 1.5 leeks. So I'm really not sure what else they're good for. I know they're really good, got good flavor in what I make here with chicken, so I imagine that, you know, some other sort of chicken based dish, you could use them as well, but you'll only be able to find them in 3 here. So then what I do is then I take it, I put the flat side down, and then, oh, my damn dogs. Quiet, out of my kitchen, come on. And then I just kind of cut a few slices as best you can, and then just like that, just cut it real thin. You know, I cut some of them a little thicker than thinner, because the thinner ones will, as they cook and it keeps cooking throughout, you know, will really get soft, and you hardly, you know, taste them, but you know, texture wise, but you'll get the flavor of them. So that's why I do some thin and some a little thicker. And I also add these to right to the beginning of the stock as well. Careful not to cut yourself. So that's basically the leeks, and I'll throw this in there right now while the chicken is cooking to give the chicken the flavor. It's really flavored the stock as well. Like I said, I threw a handful of the you know, half the onion in before, and I'll do the same thing with the celery and the same thing with the carrots. Okay, now usually I showed you before, I buy the baby peeled carrots that are ready to eat. They've already been pre-washed and everything, but I'm just a freak, so I like to wash everything. So I usually fill the bag up. I take my knife and poke a couple of holes in the bottom. Just let the water drain a little bit. And although this isn't a completely thorough wash, it nonetheless is gonna, you know, anything that's on there, just get off. You know what, I forgot I need to sharpen my knife, so I'll be right back. Alright, now my knife is sharpened, and just a little interesting little tidbit of information out there for those who are not a chef is that most people are cut by dull knives, not actually sharp knives. That's why if your knife is not sharp, generally people force things, and that's usually when they cut themselves. So what I do is I take my carrots, usually about that many. I mean, and this is just a personal preference. I like to cut them in thirds, just so that they're a little bit smaller, a little bit more bite-sized, manageable when people are eating it. But you know, you could choose to cut them however size whatever size you want. Yeah, that's pretty much it. And then I end up cutting the whole bag. Like I said, I'll throw a handful or two of these carrots in the broth right now that it just started boiling here. Finally come up to boil. So now I'll start throw a few of these in there, and then I'll throw a little bit of celery in there as well, just to give it some flavor. And then of course I always use fresh ground pepper, and I'm a little sodium conscious, so I do prefer the sea salt. You do still get the same flavor. There's less sodium, and there's not that there's no sodium, but it's a little bit less, and every little bit, you know, counts, especially, like I said, with the broth and everything else, you know, helps keep you a little bit more healthy, and the whole dish more healthy, especially for people who have high blood pressure or anything like that may be out there watching this. Okay, and then I was just thinking that while I was doing this again, that I may have obscured with my hands what I usually do. Basically, I put a bunch in a row, try to get them all the same size. That's a kind of small one, so you know, I'll eat it. These are good carrots. Then I take my knife, basically I push on all the carrots, flatten them down like that, and then that gives me, I know they're all even, so then I hold them kind of in my hand, and then I'll put the knife on there and then just go ahead and cut away. And if they roll around a little bit, you can use your knife again. Just line them up. And just keep your fingers out of the way. And then of course, celery. There's a couple different ways where people like to cut up celery. Some people will just cut the bottom completely off and then go through, you know, just make a broad cut, the lowest part, just cut it all like that. But you do that, you know, you lose all that. I'm, you know, kind of cheap, so I always like to peel every piece off of the stalk all the way down till you get to the very bottom. Sometimes you get a decent piece, and then, you know, that's pretty much the trash. Although the celery heart is actually pretty good if you cut the end of it off, and you know, you're able to trim off all the little pieces. There's not much there to it, but at least in my opinion, it doesn't taste too bad. Although the best one is in the inside of a lettuce core, like an iceberg lettuce. So then, basically, just line up like I kind of did before with the carrots, all one end. Because basically the part that I cut it off with is all about the same amount of celery that you're going to need to cut off. So I just go ahead and get rid of that, throw it in the trash. And then I go through and I individually cut each piece of the celery to length, go through all three of my stalks, and then get them all so that they're the appropriate size length, so that I can grab a handful, cut it up, cut it up, cut it up. I'm going to skip all that since you guys don't really need to see me doing all this, because you kind of get the idea. But when I go ahead and start cutting it up, I will go ahead and turn the camera back on. Okay, like I said, my sea salt, I've already actually added some. Got to turn the camera on. Now, of course, the black pepper, which I've also already added some too. I'll add, I've already seasoned that already. The other thing I like to throw in there, and this is one of my favorites, is Emerald's Essence. I pretty much throw this on everything but steak, chicken, fish, pork. It's got a great flavor too. I don't know, I mean, it may taste great on steak, but I use Grill Mate's Montreal steak seasoning for that. So I always, again, shake it up. A little bit here for flavor. Now I really like this, especially with chicken. Emerald's Essence. A couple of the spices I use some thyme leaves, oregano. Of course, I love garlic, so I do throw some garlic powder in there. Some people prefer the salt, but again, I really don't like the extra added salt. It's too salty for me. Then marjoram, I think is how you say it. I don't know. I know someone's going to correct me or say it's a different pronouncing. But this is really good with poultry as well. And then I usually the Italian seasoning blend I put on there. It mix in there as well. Once I first start, you know, it starts boiling. And in addition, I've added, like I said, a handful of the carrots, the celery, the leeks. You know, you can see them, you know, kind of floating on the top here right now, just as everything is starting to boil, is the onions. So, yeah, the spices, put the cover on there, I let it cook for an hour and 10 minutes or so. In the meantime, I finish cutting up all the vegetables. Then once the vegetables go in, then it's go time. It's a lot easier to do the final step with a second person, but it is possible, and as you will see, to do with one person, although not easy. But you can do it. It just takes a little practice, and then we'll be good. Okay, see you then. Okay, so as you can see, I have my celery. I've cut both ends off of it there. It's washed as well. What I'll do, depending on the size of it or what I want, you know, some of them I cut a little smaller, like I said, because then they really cook down and they turn to mush, and all you do is get the flavor of them. And then some other ones I like to cut a little bit bigger, so you actually get some texture in the chicken dumplings each time you take a bite. So, you know, these smaller ones, you know, I'll probably cut them, you know, right down the center like this. And cut it again as best you can. And it's not ever really even with these either, as you can see, you know, because they're curved anyways. When you cut them flat like that, they tend to do that type of, you know, splay like that. So, you know, those will produce the smaller ones. And then other times, like I said, when I want it bigger, I just cut them straight down the center once. And then again, use the edge of your knife to line everything up. And go ahead and cut it. You have a couple of pieces that are longer sometimes than the rest of them. Makes it easier just to pull them out. Cut what you've got. And then cut these behind it. And then that's pretty much how you cut all the vegetables, or at least that's the way I cut the vegetables in order to put them into the chicken and dumplings once it's the chicken's all cooked, and these are all the raw vegetables that actually give the crunch. The ones that I put in there now basically cook down and you have no texture whatsoever. They just give you all flavor. So that's how I cut it, but you know, you guys experiment and do it your own way, and let me know how it turns out. Okay, so I'm all done cutting my onions, my leeks, the celery, and the carrots. I fill up 2 big Ziploc baggies. And in addition to using that, I also use a 12 quart I guess 12 quart, I'll have to double check again, but 12 quart pan that I put some of the broth in because when I go to start cooking the dumplings, they plump up so much that if I just do it in that one pot, it would overflow the pot. So I actually have to go to 2 pots. And then once it's all done cooking, then I combine it back into 1 pot again. But unfortunately, that's like that because of the dumplings. So I'm going to get this cleaned up and we'll do the dumplings next. Okay, so now I've taken the chickens out of the broth and I've separated them, and I've actually put them in the bowls, and like I said, I've got them sitting in the freezer right there to cool down, because it's a lot easier to debone those when they're cool. So now you take off the top there, and as you can see, you got quite a nice, thick, rich broth. Now, one of the things I did fail to mention is that at this point, if you wanted to make it much more low fat, what you would do is you would take this broth and you would, well actually at this point it's stock, take the stock and put it in the refrigerator, let it sit overnight, and then the next morning, because it's, I don't know if you could see it on the camera, but there is a layer of grease and fat on the top there. Is very little as it's actually on there. I actually keep it in there because that's part of the flavor, because there's really not a whole lot of fat to this whole recipe other than that, because obviously I keep the skin on the chicken when I boil it. But those that are really concerned about it can put it in the refrigerator, and you'll be more apt to get it. Otherwise, you could just try to skim off some of it off the top, is what I do. I'd skim just a little bit, you know, depending on how much is there. Like tonight, this batch, I will skim off probably 3 or 4 ladlefuls of my spoon that you see right there. So then once I do that, then I return this to a full boil, and then we'll put all the vegetables in. Unfortunately, my battery died while I was doing all this, so I've got to recharge it again. I just wanted to show you this. I'm going to do most of the biscuits, let it charge while I'm doing the biscuits, and then last few biscuits I will turn it back on and show you exactly how it's done. Okay, so now I have the broth boiling, stock, broth, whatever you want to call it, boiling. Now I'm going to take the 2 bags of vegetables that I've already cut up, throw them in there, bring them back to a boil. Once those vegetables come back to a boil, let them boil for 10 minutes. Then, as you can see, I'm already started cutting up the biscuits here. I've got 2 more rolls to do. I'll do 1, and then I will bring you guys back online and let me do the last one, because obviously it is a mess. It does make quite a little mess here, but you gotta make sure you have a rolling pin as well, and that does help. Although you can improvise, use a glass if you have it or anything like that. And here's my other pan. Once all the vegetables cook, that is when I will then separate, you know, the vegetables and broth together, and then pour most of the dumplings in here, and then, you know, a portion of them in there, in order to make all of them, so you'll see how they plump up. Let me continue to recharge the battery. Oh, actually no, it's fully charged. So let me sign off here, finish the last roll, and I'll see you guys in a minute. Okay, so as you see, I had the vigorously boiling stock going. I threw in all the vegetables, and because the vegetables was so much colder than obviously the boiling stock, it brought everything down to temperature. I've stirred it up a bunch of times. I'm going to put the top back on there. Once it comes to boil, you set the timer for 10 minutes, let the vegetables boil, and then that's when we start throwing in the biscuits. So, and that's when the fun really begins. Okay, so like I said, I use the Grand's biscuits. One thing I did fail to mention: make sure you use like the home style Southern or you know, buttermilk. Don't use the flaky layers, because it will not come out right, because the biscuits all fall apart. It's a different type of material altogether. So make sure you do use the right type of biscuits as well. So pull off the outside labeling there. Toss that in the trash. There are two ways to do it. You can pop it against the counter there, or you can squeeze it. Make sure you get all 8 of them out. Any debris into the trash. So then I just take them and I separate them, each one. Obviously I've initially covered my counter with flour. That's why I use so much flour. And then go ahead and take them and coat all, both sides. And all around the edges as well. So, basically just flip them over. Coat all the edges. Take it, flip it over. Coat the edges. Like I said, take your rolling pin. What I do is make sure I have enough flour down there. And then put a little bit more on the top. And then I roll it out. Yeah, I guess, approximately 6 inches long. Throw some extra on there. Now, I have to flip it over and turn it. Put more on the top there. And then roll it out again. Now, when you first look at it, it doesn't look like there's really any difference. There's a lot of flour on the top there, and you actually want to keep that flour on there. So I just slide it right over there like that, and you can kind of see it's all cracked and bent. On this next one, I will actually lift it up and actually show you how much flour is still left on there. And you want that flour. Even after I cut them up, I throw a little bit of flour on the top because the edges that I cut are not floured, obviously. So I make sure I coat those as well, because the flour is also what makes sure that we thickens the sauce. I said about 6 inches wide, or long rather, and then the same, just so that they're almost, in a circle. And like I said, just to give you an idea. I mean, obviously there was some underneath there, but there's a lot of flour that I put on top of there, and I make sure I really roll it in, on both sides, because like I said, it really thickens it up. So in this case, I'll take it over there and then make sure I cover it over it well with flour. And I'll do the rest, and then we'll get over to putting them in the broth in a minute. Okay, now, one thing I just realized too is you keep seeing me wearing gloves. You do not need to wear gloves other than initially when you're working with the chicken. And then later on also when I strip the chicken, I wear gloves just so the grease and everything doesn't get all over my hands. It's easier to take it on and off. But the reason why I'm doing it is so that I can pull the glove off quickly and push the stop and start button on my camera without getting it all full of flour or whatever it is I'm working with. So basically I'm going to show you, I showed you how to roll all of them out. Now I've got my stack of 8 biscuits all laid out there with flour all in between them. Basically I just make about 4 or 5 cuts. I'm going to pick this off here. Actually, I don't know why I did that, but you can kind of see about the thickness of each of those. And then I just take it and cut it right down the center. And then of course, like I said before, with the extra flour, when I cut that, all those exposed areas obviously need a little bit of flour. So once I pick them up, then I lay them over the plate here. I'll take a little bit of extra flour and just sprinkle it over the top. and there are the biscuits. So just gotta wait for the vegetables to come out to boil, and boil them for 10 minutes, and then we'll pick it up from there. Alright, bye-bye. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is, now that they're covered and I'm still waiting, I really don't want them to dry out or anything like that, or get too warm, because they are biscuits after all. So I'm going to go ahead and cover them with a little bit of tin foil. Go ahead and throw them in the refrigerator. I'm going to go ahead and clean up all this stuff while I'm waiting for that to go ahead and boil, and then we'll pick it up from there. Okay, so my vegetables are boiling. I will stir them periodically, but now I will make sure I set the timer, and notice the time it is right now, and I started a little after 6 o'clock, although I did stop for a short time to talk to my daughter. So I'll go ahead and set the timer for 10 minutes, and we'll be picking it up there. Okay, so it's been 10 minutes. Don't want to lose any of that flavor. They said this particular pot right here, I believe, is 12 quarts, but I did measure it, and it is 6 3/8 inches wide and 9 3/4 inches tall. Just so you get an idea. So then what I want to do is basically, you can see all the delicious juiciness and flavor, and if you could just smell this right now, that's one of the great things about making this, is your whole house is going to smell amazing while you're making it. So, I stir it up. God, this is a particularly good batch. So then I just take this in there. And start filling up. Because right now, if I tried to put biscuits in here, this would be overflowing all over my stove. As it is, it probably still will. Let's see. One more. Some of that. Let's just some of the cheeses. Okay, so just so we kind of get an idea, it's approximately 4 inches below the edge of the lip there, and I got almost 2 1/4 right there. So I'm going to put most of the dumplings in there, and then the rest of the dumplings in there. Obviously I'm going to get this one up to boiling. Turn this one down, put the cover back on that, put the cover on this. Alright, we're almost there. We're almost where the fun is going to really begin for one person. Okay, now, this is where I said this is where the tricky part comes. I've got the broths both vigorously boiling. I take the biggest spatulas I can find, because you then take your biscuits that we so carefully cut up, and you always want the biscuits to hit the broth. You don't want biscuits to fall on top of other wet biscuits, because then you get clumps, and that's where your spatula really comes in handy. The first couple of handfuls, you're going to see me. I'm just going to, start throwing handfuls in really quickly, but then I got to grab the spatula because they're going to start rising to the top. And I'm not going to really have a lot of time to explain what I'm doing, because I got to concentrate on doing that, because I've never really tried to videotape this at the same time as doing it. Okay, so basically just take 2 big handfuls and drop them in individually and initially they sink right to the bottom. So that's why your best bet is the first couple of handfuls. So then stir them in a little bit. Alright, then this is where the tricky part comes, like I said. And as you can see, I'm grabbing as much flour as I can as well, so that I'm dropping the flour in there, because the flour also, like I said before, helps thicken up everything that's there. Oh, I gotta put these under here. Okay, so I can put those over there. Now, what happens is that all these biscuits that I put in here, they initially, like I said, drop down and then they float. The idea is to make sure that they keep contact with the broth and the stock enough, because after a few minutes they actually fall down to the bottom again. Once they fall down to the bottom, that is when you set the timer for 10 minutes and then basically shut the heat off. That's after all these biscuits fall down to the bottom. That's usually when I take the chickens out of the freezer and I start stripping them down, because once the 10 minutes is done, basically your chicken and dumplings is cooked. I mean, everything is done, it's ready, but you just got to put the chicken in. So put the caps back on here now, take this plate of flour, throw it out into the sink. Okay. So now we're just waiting for both of these to come out to boil. Like I said, the biscuits, as you can see right on top of here through the glass there, are on the top. You know, every minute or two I'll go in, I'll stir them up a little bit just to make sure that they stay wet, and then eventually they'll all sink down to the bottom, like I said, and then once they're all sunk down to the bottom, set the timer for 10 minutes and you're good. Okay. So I'm stirring up these ones over here on this side a little bit. I also, you know, will mix up the broth a little bit, really give it a good stir, try to push them underneath. Now these ones happen to be going pretty good here. You can kind of see bubbling through. Push them down underneath the stock, start to get them to cook. Because basically what happens, they're filled with air, so as the broth and everything cooks them, the air and everything, and actually they produce carbon dioxide. That's what it is. It's not air, it's carbon dioxide, and that's what makes them want to float to the top. So continue to keep them wet, you know, and then occasionally you get some pieces that are stuck together. You know, just try to pull them apart a little bit as best you can without breaking them. Cover back on and go ahead and continue to wait. Like I said, it is very messy. I got flour all over my stove here, and oops, nope, we had a stray one that missed it, but you know, it's too late now. They're already all in there. That's trash now. So we're waiting, and luckily I had 2 timers. So because this one usually does boil, since it's a smaller volume, will boil faster. And drop them down faster. But what's nice is that you, with the glass top, you can see it cook. So as you can see, we're still going here. It does take a little while, but you know, the dumplings are starting to sink. We're almost there. And just as soon as we're there with that one, we'll set the timer, like I said, for 10 minutes. And oh man, I can't wait to have a little bit of this, although it's currently 10:30 here and I'm not going to have a big bowl because I got to work in the morning, but I always do taste a little bit when it's done, and it is delish. The big pot here, as you can see, is just starting to boil up, and some of that steam escaped over and flared up the fire, but this is at a much closer stage than this one is. And actually, which isn't a bad thing, because let me see here, let me switch this camera over here. So basically, you know, that's what I keep doing with this one, is just every few minutes take the cover off. You can see some of the stuff still going to get clumped on the top there. Just go ahead and push it down underneath the broth. Stir it up a little bit here, the broth in the bottom. And as you can see, you know, rather than broth, it's really starting to become like stew-like. And that's really what we want. So, cover back on that. And come back over to here. And you can wait till they actually all fall down, but you know, this does help the process along, and you know, you don't have to wait as long. But you know, now here's the thing, I'm going to start only using this spoon for this one because of the how everything is starting to settle. I want something that's not going to scratch the bottom of my pan there. Before I wasn't too concerned because all I was doing was pushing it down, but now I got my plastic spoon out, so therefore, because now the trick is you got to stir it every couple minutes, because all the biscuits that have settled all the way down to the bottom, you don't want them to burn. And there we go. Make sure we get all the stuff off the bottom. And you see, it's looking beautiful. It's got a really nice consistency to it at this point, and the longer it cooks, the biscuits will also thicken it up. That's why it's important to make sure you don't skimp on the flour. Here we go with this one. I have to turn the heat down a little bit on this because it's boiling just a little too much. That's probably good there. You can see almost all the biscuits in there have settled, and whereas most of the ones here are settling, and you get a little clumping right there. You know, just kind of be gentle with it. If you have to, just take it and stab it and break it in half if it's too big. You know, you want small pieces. You don't want really big pieces. Alright, so not all of them have completely settled to the bottom, but then again, like I said, some of them are a little bit bigger than the other ones. So I'm going to go ahead and set the timer for this one for, 10 minutes. That's hot. Alright, so 10 minutes. We're good there. We're almost good here. I got my other timer ready to go right there. And now, like every minute or two, like I said, I just gotta stir up from the bottom, make sure that everything doesn't burn on the bottom. And then after 10 minutes, shut the heat off. And then throw the chicken in whenever you're ready. I have not yet even pulled it out of the freezer to strip it yet because I've been too busy doing this. As soon as the 10 minutes is up on both of them, I'm going to strip that chicken out, and then you know, just leave these sitting here. They will stay so hot for several hours, almost like burning tongue hot. So make sure you're real careful when you go ahead and sample it. And then I'll throw the chicken in. Usually what I do is once they're done cooking, I add that back to the big batch, add the chicken, and then distribute it and mix it all up so that way everything has the same flavor, same consistency, and works out perfect. So alright, so I will awaken you guys on the on the next leg of our journey of the chicken and dumplings from the south. Now, okay, I just stirred it, and what I'm noticing is, what I did forget to mention, is that it is normal for some of the biscuits to stay on the top. They still will cook as long as they are basically submerged like you see. You just see the little tips of them, like icebergs. You only see 10% of them, the other 90% of them are underneath. Now over here, we're still not quite there, and of course it's because we have a much larger volume of of chicken and dumplings in which to heat up to proper temperature and get the biscuits to fall. But you know, there's a big clump right there. What I do with that is basically just cut it with a spoon right in half. There you go. Bada bing, you got smaller bite pieces. So we're getting further and further along in the process and closer and closer to the goal. Okay, so timer just went off, and as you can see, everything is beautiful. It's like a nice little stew, which is exactly the way you want it. This is a little bit thin, but the other batch there is a little bit thick, and then once I mix them together and then throw the chicken in, it will be absolutely perfect. Like I said, now the timer's done. That's it. It's complete. I could scoop a bowl of that and eat that just like that without the chicken, but now I got to go strip the chicken and combine it all and do all that, and then it's done, ready for everyone to enjoy. Okay, so the other timer went off. This batch is done. Finally. And as much as you can see, it's looking just like the other batch. So, and of course, now that I've shut the heat off, you can see that the biscuits all sink to the bottom, much like in this one. You know, no biscuits on the top there until I start stirring it up. Don't want to lose any deliciousness. Alright, now this is the tricky part. Hopefully I don't get any, the tricky part. This is one of them. Getting all this back in here without splashing any on the lens. So I'm going to try to pour it from this direction. Usually the slower the better. One of the other tricks too, if you have a second person, which is extremely helpful, you can take the spoon and use that, or the back side of the spoon. I prefer that side. Whew! One steam on the hand. Quiet dog. Wrong spoon. And as you can see, I'm scraping and bada bing. I've got almost an inch to the top. That'll be the perfect amount for chicken. I'll put the chicken in there, stir it all up, and then we're done. That's it. That's the homemade southern chicken and dumplings. And I don't waste any of the meat on the chicken. Dark, white, I get every little bit off there. Yum, yum, yum. Okay, so this has been sitting for a little while now, but as I stir it up, you can see, you know, the consistency All the vegetables, everything, just the good yumminess. I've now also finished stripping all the chicken. So now it's just a matter of taking and putting all the chicken, and I break it up into kind of bigger pieces because especially as it, you heat it up later and you put it into different Tupperware, it's going to break up into smaller and smaller pieces. So as you can see, we're getting kind of close to the top there.
Carved on the walls are images that show the importance of the sun in the Egyptian religion. So just look at this shape. At the very top, you have the solar disk. And coming out from it is light, the light of the sun. It's coming out in waves. Waves come out from anywhere.
All that delicious chickenness.
And those hands hold the sign of light, the sign of
Not
power.
even a word.
Sun equals light.
Alright, well, I'm going to cut away from this because as you can see, it's kind of full right now, and I'd rather you not see the mess I'm going to make as I do this. But it's done. You can just mix it all up, put it in a bowl, and dish it out. I'm actually going to take it once I'm done mixing this up, put it in all Tupperwares because it is 11:30 at night, and I am ready to go to bed. Hope this helps everybody. You got any questions? You can always email me.